This candy red custom Corvette became one of cinema's most polarizing movie cars, loved by some, despised by purists, and featuring modifications so bizarre they included motorcycle parts and a steering wheel on the wrong side. From real-life thefts mirroring the plot to a catastrophic shipping accident in Australia, this flamboyant 70s icon has a backstory as wild as its appearance. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Corvette Summer's custom 1973 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. Fact 1. Saved from the crusher minutes before death. The 1973 Corvette that would become the star of Corvette Summer had a brush with death that was almost too close to call. This particular vehicle had been involved in a serious rear-end collision, the kind where another car slams into you so hard that there's simply no coming back from it. The damage was severe enough that the insurance company took one look at the crumpled rear end and immediately declared the Corvette a total loss. At that point, the car's fate was sealed and it was hauled off to a California junkyard where it sat among countless other discarded vehicles, all waiting for the same grim ending. The crusher was running that day, methodically destroying car after car, and this battered Corvette was literally in line, waiting its turn to be compacted into a cube of scrap metal. But then something remarkable happened. Producers Matthew Robbins and Hal Barwood were actively searching for a Corvette to use in their upcoming film, and they happened to visit this particular junkyard at exactly the right moment. When they spotted the damaged 1973 Stingray sitting there, minutes away from being permanently destroyed, they saw potential rather than just another wreck. The rear-end damage didn't matter to them because they were planning extensive customization anyway, and the fact that it was already an insurance write-off meant they could acquire it cheaply. They made the decision right then and there to rescue the car from the crusher, giving it a second life that would eventually make it one of the most recognizable movie cars of the late 1970s, even if it would also become one of the most controversial. Fact 2. Right-hand drive. With Harley-Davidson parts, one of the most unusual modifications made to the Corvette Summer car was converting it from standard left-hand drive to right-hand drive. And the reason behind this change was purely about the plot and visual appeal of the film. In the movie, Mark Hamill's character, Kenny Dantley, is obsessed with cruising and getting close to girls on the sidewalk, so having the steering wheel on the right side of the car would allow him to lean out the window and talk to people on the curb without them being on the passenger side. It was a practical filming choice that added to the car's already eccentric personality. But here's where things get truly weird. Rather than doing a proper automotive conversion with appropriate steering components, the customizers came up with a solution that was equal parts ingenious and terrifying. They left the original steering box on the left side of the car where it was designed to be, and then used a Harley-Davidson motorcycle chain and 2 sprockets bolted under the dashboard to mechanically connect the right side steering wheel to the left side steering box. This chain drive system meant that when you turned the steering wheel on the right, the chain would rotate the sprockets and transfer that motion across to the steering box on the left. While this setup worked for filming purposes and slow-speed driving, it was absolutely not designed for any kind of spirited or hard driving. The chain system had slack in it, which meant imprecise steering response, and the whole contraption was visible under the dash as a rather crude mechanical solution that prioritized movie magic over actual drivability. Fact 3. The movie car got stolen during filming. In one of the strangest cases of life imitating art, the custom Corvette being used for filming actually disappeared from the MGM studio lot during production, creating a real-life drama that eerily mirrored the movie's central plot about a stolen custom car. The theft occurred over a weekend, and when the crew arrived at the studio lot on Monday, September 12, 1977, they discovered that the main Corvette was simply gone. This wasn't just any prop either, it was the hero car, the one used for all the close-up shots and beauty scenes, and without it, the entire production schedule had to be immediately rearranged. The producers and studio security were understandably panicked, and they contacted the police right away. Fortunately, the stolen Corvette was recovered later that same day, so the disruption to filming was relatively minimal, but the story of how and why it was stolen turned out to be even more bizarre than the theft itself. It wasn't some random car thief who spotted an interesting custom Corvette and decided to take it for a joyride. Instead, the theft was apparently orchestrated as part of internal studio politics, with one faction within MGM trying to sabotage another group by making them look incompetent and unreliable. The plan was to steal the car and let the other group take the blame for losing track of such an important piece of the production, hopefully getting them fired in the process. This incredibly petty and risky scheme ultimately failed, but it added yet another layer of weirdness to a movie car that seemed to attract strange stories wherever it went. Fact 4. 9 non-functional hood scoops. The hood of the Corvette summer car is impossible to ignore, and not just because of its sheer size. It's absolutely covered with scoops, vents, and bulges that make it look like something from a science fiction movie or a custom show car taken to an extreme. If you actually count them all, there are 9 separate hood scoops scattered across the surface in an asymmetrical pattern that seems to defy conventional automotive design. Some of them have a bubble-like plexiglass appearance that lets you see through to the engine bay, while others feature what people have described as softish teeth, styling with jagged edges that look aggressive and somewhat menacing. The asymmetrical arrangement means that the left side of the hood doesn't match the right side, giving the car an unbalanced appearance that some people find fascinating and others find deeply unsettling. But here's the really interesting part. Despite all those scoops and vents, not a single one of them is functional. They don't channel air to the engine for cooling, they don't create any kind of ram air effect for performance, and they don't serve any practical purpose whatsoever. They're purely decorative, designed to make the car look wild and extreme for the camera. This design choice remains one of the most polarizing features of the entire car, with automotive purists pointing to it as evidence of style over substance taken to an absurd degree, while others argue that, as a movie prop car, functionality was never the point. The hood became so iconic that it's one of the first things people mention when they talk about the Corvette summer car, even if they're usually complaining about how over-the-top it looks. Fact 5. 6 to 8 layers of metal flake paint. The candy apple red paint job on the Corvette summer car is one of its most striking visual features, and achieving that deep, shimmering finish required a painting process that was far more complex than most people would ever imagine. This wasn't a simple matter of spraying on a couple of coats of red paint and calling it done. The painters used an elaborate old-fashioned technique that involved applying somewhere between 6 and 8 separate layers of different paints and coatings to create the final effect. The process started with a base coat that was actually gold metal flake rather than red, which might seem counterintuitive until you understand how the layering works to create depth and visual complexity. On top of that gold metal flake base, the painters applied translucent tint coats in red and orange, which allowed the gold underneath to show through and interact with the colored layers above it. Then came multiple clear top coats to protect everything and add even more depth and shine to the finish. The result was a paint job that didn't look flat or one-dimensional like regular paint. Instead, it seemed to shift tones and catch the light differently, depending on the angle you viewed it from and what kind of lighting it was under. In bright sunlight, you might see more of the gold and orange tones coming through, while in other conditions, the red would dominate. This metal flake technique was popular in custom car culture during the 1970s, but it was time-consuming and expensive, requiring real skill to execute properly. The strained, scalloped flame pattern along the sides was achieved by carefully taping off sections during the painting process and then removing the tape at different stages, allowing the underlying colors to show through in specific areas. Fact 6. Built in just 13 weeks for $30,000 when Dick Corks and his team at Corky's Custom Studios took on the job of transforming the wrecked 1973 Corvette into the movie car that producers Matthew Robbins and Hal Barwood envisioned, they were working under some seriously tight constraints. The entire project had to be completed in just 13 weeks, which doesn't sound like much time when you consider the extensive modifications that needed to be done. We're talking about custom bodywork, the right-hand drive conversion, the elaborate paint job, the flip-type hood, and countless other details that all had to come together to create a car that would look incredible on camera. The budget was equally challenging, with Corcus given $30,000 to build both cars, though some sources suggest the total might have been closer to $60,000 for both the main hero car and the backup stunt car. Either way, it wasn't an enormous amount of money for such extensive custom work, especially by Hollywood standards. What makes this even more interesting is that Dick Corks didn't just build the cars and walk away. He also served as a technical advisor on the film, helping to ensure that the automotive scenes looked authentic and that the crew handled the cars properly during filming. He even spent time teaching Mark Hamill about cars and how to talk about them convincingly on camera, which helped Hamill's character come across as genuinely knowledgeable and passionate about automotive customization. Despite all these contributions to the film, Corcus never received an on-screen credit, which seems like a significant oversight given how central the car was to the movie's identity and how much work he put into making it a reality. Fact 7. Clamshell hood before the C4 Corvette. Among all the custom modifications made to the Corvette summer car, the flip-type clamshell hood stands out as one of the most impressive and forward-thinking features, especially when you consider the timeline. This hood design allowed the entire front section to tilt forward as one piece, giving complete access to the engine bay without having to prop up a traditional hood or work around hinges in the middle. It looked dramatic and futuristic, and it made for great visual moments in the film when the hood was opened to reveal the engine underneath. What makes this modification particularly noteworthy is that it was completed in 1977 for a 1978 movie release, which means the customizers created this clamshell hood design a full 5 years before Chevrolet introduced a similar factory clamshell hood on the C4 Corvette in 1983. Whether the Chevrolet engineers were inspired by this custom car or whether it was simply a case of parallel thinking is unclear, but either way, the Corvette summer car was ahead of its time in this particular aspect. The practical reason for this modification wasn't just about looks. The film crew needed to mount and dismount cameras in and around the engine bay for various shots, and having a hood that opened up completely made this process much faster and easier than if they'd had to work around a traditional hood that only tilted up from one side. This meant less time spent setting up shots and more flexibility in how they could film the car during production, which was crucial given the tight 13-week timeline for building the vehicles. Fact 8. The Australian car ended up underwater. After filming wrapped on Corvette summer, the two custom Corvettes went their separate ways, and the main hero car ended up on quite an adventure that took it halfway around the world to Australia. An Australian collector purchased this car, which was the more finished of the two vehicles and the one used for all the close-up beauty shots in the film. For a while, everything seemed fine, but then disaster struck during what should have been a routine transportation job. The car was being moved cross-country on a transport truck when a serious accident occurred, and the Corvette ended up at the bottom of a river. The exact details of how this happened remain a bit unclear, but the result was that one of only two original movie cars was now completely submerged in water. Most people would have written off the car as a total loss at that point, figuring that a custom fiberglass Corvette that had been underwater wasn't worth the enormous effort and expense of salvaging and restoring. But the Australian automotive community didn't give up on it. A small custom shop in Brisbane called Smooth Customs took on the incredibly challenging task of not just salvaging the waterlogged vehicle, but completely rebuilding it to a much higher standard than it had been built to originally. Since the car had been constructed as a movie prop, it had various shortcuts and less than ideal construction methods that prioritized appearance over long-term durability. The rebuild addressed all of these issues, and the car was even upgraded mechanically to meet Australia's stricter roadworthiness standards. By the time Smooth Customs finished their work, only the doors remained from the original movie car. Everything else had been reconstructed, making it essentially a completely new vehicle that maintained the spirit and appearance of the original. Fact 9. Movie title was stolen. 2. The trouble surrounding Corvette Summer extended beyond just the car itself. Even the movie's title became caught up in a bizarre situation that forced multiple name changes during production. When the project was first conceived and went into development, the producers decided to call it Stingray, which made perfect sense given that. The custom Corvette Stingray was the central focus of the entire film. MGM went through the proper channels and registered the title with the Motion Picture Association of America, believing this would protect their right to use the name. However, the agreement that existed among major studios to avoid duplicating film titles didn't extend to independent productions, which meant a smaller company could use the same name without any real consequences. As luck would have it, an independent film with the exact same title was already in production in St. Louis, Missouri, and since that smaller production was scheduled to be released first, MGM faced a serious problem. Even though they had registered the title and had every intention of using it, they didn't want audiences to be confused or to have their big studio production associated with a low-budget independent film that happened to have the same name. The studio initially considered fighting for the title, but ultimately decided it wasn't worth the hassle and potential negative publicity. They changed the name to simply Corvette, which was straightforward but perhaps a bit generic. That wasn't the end of it, though. The title went through yet another revision before release, finally becoming Corvette Summer, which gave it a bit more character and better suggested the coming-of-age summer adventure tone of the film. Fact 10. The collector hated it and changed it. When the main hero car from Corvette Summer was sold to an Australian collector after the film's release and promotional tour, you might expect that the new owner would want to preserve this piece of Hollywood history exactly as it appeared in the movie. After all, the car had been on screen, it was recognizable, and it represented a specific moment in 1970s custom car culture. But that's not what happened at all. According to reports, the collector who purchased the car found the original design so aesthetically displeasing that they decided to have it completely altered from its movie appearance. This meant changing or removing some of the most distinctive custom features that had made the car recognizable in the first place, the very elements that gave it value as a movie prop. The irony of this decision is almost painful to consider from a collector's perspective, because by modifying the car away from its screen-used appearance, the owner was actually decreasing its value as a piece of film history rather than preserving or enhancing it. Movie cars and screen-used props typically command premium prices precisely because they're authentic pieces that appeared in actual productions, and any deviation from that original configuration tends to hurt their collectability and market value. Film car enthusiasts and historians generally prefer vehicles to be maintained in their as-filmed condition, even if that condition includes questionable aesthetic choices or over-the-top customization that wouldn't appeal to everyone's taste. The Corvette Summer car was certainly polarizing and controversial, but that controversy was part of its identity and part of what made it interesting. By changing it, the collector essentially removed much of what made the car special, turning it into just another custom Corvette rather than a documented movie car. Fact 11. Stock side pipes weren't connected. Throughout the movie, the custom Corvette features prominently displayed side pipes running along the lower body panels, and characters even refer to them multiple times as mercury tubes, giving them an exotic-sounding name that suggested they were some kind of high-performance exhaust system. These chrome side pipes were positioned right where everyone could see them, and they looked impressive, adding to the overall custom appearance of the car and suggesting that this Corvette had serious performance modifications under all that flashy bodywork. However, careful viewers who paid attention during the car chase scenes near the end of the film could spot something that revealed the truth about those impressive-looking side pipes. When the Corvette skids to a stop at one point and then accelerates away again, you can actually see smoke coming out from under the rear bumper, which is exactly where the stock exhaust pipes exit on a factory Corvette. If the mercury tube's side pipes had been functional and properly connected to the exhaust system, there wouldn't be any exhaust coming from the stock location. It would all be routed through the side pipes instead. This visible evidence proves that those prominently featured side pipes were nothing more than decorative add-ons, purely there for visual impact without any actual function. They weren't hooked up to anything, they didn't carry exhaust gases, and they certainly didn't improve performance in any way. This was another example of the car being built primarily as a movie prop, where appearance mattered far more than mechanical authenticity or function, and the filmmakers apparently didn't worry too much about whether eagle-eyed gearheads in the audience might notice this detail during the action sequences. Fact 12. Danny Bonaduce of the Partridge Family was in the movie. The cast of Corvette Summer included an interesting connection to another 1970s pop culture phenomenon through the presence of Danny Bonaduce, who had become a household name playing Danny Partridge on the hit television series The Partridge Family, which ran from 1970 to 1974. By the time Corvette Summer was filming in 1977, Bonaduce was trying to transition from child star to adult actor, taking on roles that would let him be seen as something other than the wisecracking kid from the Family Band sitcom. In Corvette Summer, he played a character named Coots, one of Mark Hamill's high school classmates in the automotive shop class that builds the custom Corvette. Coots's role in the story turns out to be crucial, though not in a way that makes him look particularly heroic or competent. He's the hapless friend who gets left in charge of watching the car for just a moment while he goes to fetch sodas for everyone. And of course, that's exactly when the thieves strike and steal the Corvette, setting the entire plot in motion. If Coots had been more responsible, or if Kenny had trusted someone else to watch the car during that critical moment, there wouldn't have been a movie at all. This casting choice created an interesting intersection between two very different corners of 1970s entertainment: the wholesome, family-friendly world of the Partridge Family and the car culture adventure of Corvette Summer. For audiences at the time, seeing Danny Bonaduce in this role would have been immediately recognizable, adding a bit of extra star power to the supporting cast, even if his character was only in a few scenes. Fact 13. Electrical conduit used for frame construction. When Dick Corks and his team at Corky's Custom Studios set about creating the dramatically modified front end of the Corvette, they needed to build a supporting frame structure that would hold all the custom fiberglass bodywork in place. In a professional automotive restoration or high-end custom car build, you would typically use proper metal tubing specifically designed for automotive structural applications, materials that are engineered to handle stress, vibration, and the various forces that a car experiences during normal operation. But Corky's took a different approach that perfectly illustrated the movie prop mentality of prioritizing appearance and functionality for filming over long-term durability or safety. Instead of traditional automotive tubing, he used electrical conduit, which is the type of metal pipe normally used in construction and electrical work to protect wiring running through walls and ceilings. Electrical conduit is readily available at any hardware store. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's easy to cut and work with using basic tools, which made it an attractive option when you're building something quickly on a budget. The problem is that electrical conduit isn't designed to be a structural component in a vehicle that will be driven, especially not one supporting custom bodywork that extends well beyond the original dimensions of the car. This improvised approach was emblematic of how the entire car was constructed, good enough to look amazing on camera and survive the relatively gentle demands of film production, but not something you'd want to drive hard or trust in any kind of demanding situation. Fact 14. The paint job has a gold alter ego. One of the plot points in Corvette Summer involves the custom Corvette getting repainted from its distinctive candy apple red with flames to a gold color scheme, and then eventually back to red again. For most movies, this kind of transformation would be handled with camera tricks, careful lighting, or maybe some quick touch-up work between scenes to suggest that time had passed and the car had been repainted. But the producers of Corvette Summer took a much more ambitious and expensive approach to solving this production challenge. Before filming even began, they had Dick Corks build two completely separate cars, one finished in the iconic red metal flake with the flame graphics, and another one painted in the gold color scheme that appears in the middle section of the film. This meant they could shoot all the red car scenes, then switch to the gold car for those sequences, and then go back to the red car for the finale, all without having to worry about actually repainting anything or dealing with continuity issues during the editing process. Having two cars also provided a backup in case one of them broke down or suffered damage during filming, which turned out to be a wise decision given what happened next. During the production, both of the custom Corvettes were stolen in separate incidents, which created an enormous crisis for the film crew since they suddenly didn't have the most important prop for their entire movie. The cars were eventually recovered, but the situation was serious enough that the producers had to scramble and have two more Corvettes hastily built to replace them or serve as additional backups, ensuring they could finish the film. Fact 15. It sparked a customization craze. Despite being controversial, the Corvette from Corvette Summer has the distinction of being simultaneously beloved and despised, often considered one of the ugliest custom Corvettes ever built, while also being recognized as one of the most influential movie cars of the 1970s. Automotive purists frequently point to it as an example of excessive customization, taken way too far, with its asymmetrical hood scoops, over-the-top bodywork, and general disregard for the clean lines that made the C3 Corvette attractive in the first place. Many Corvette enthusiasts openly state that a Corvette should never look like this car, and they cringe at the thought of someone taking a perfectly good Stingray and transforming it into something so outlandish. But despite all this criticism and controversy, or perhaps because of it, the car has had a lasting impact on car culture and has inspired countless people over the decades since the movie's release. The curator at the National Corvette Museum has reported receiving weekly calls from enthusiasts who want information about how to recreate the Corvette's summer design, either asking about body kits, molds, or technical details about how various modifications were achieved. This steady stream of interest has continued for years, demonstrating that there's a genuine fan base for this controversial vehicle. Perhaps even more importantly, many Corvette enthusiasts have cited the Corvette Summer car as their gateway Corvette, the vehicle that first sparked their interest in the brand and sent them down the path of becoming passionate Corvette owners and collectors themselves, even if their tastes eventually evolved toward more traditional or tasteful examples of the mark. Examples of the mark.